My name is Joel Davison. I'm a Gadigal and Dunghutti man from Sydney, of course, Gadigal-an. And by day, I deliver technology projects, and by night, I do the most that I can to help revitalize the language of my ancestors. And I write poetry and a bunch of other stuff, I suppose. So my connection to country is a very complicated topic. I love Gadigal country, and I love my grandma's Dunghutti country, Nans country up north. And I've lived in and around Gadigal country all my life, and I just love Sydney. But it's for starters, so expensive to live here. You need to really compromise on what you're willing to be able to do with the majority of your time just to pay rent and get your smash davo around Sydney. And there's a city on top of my ancestral country, so it's an interesting concept, reconnecting to country and decolonizing. When there's roads and towers on top of the places where your ancestors lived and loved and built the culture that we love. Yeah, it means a lot to be a part of this project. The Makarrata project is, just the I think one of the perfect things that the Oils could have done in today's day and age. And it's since its inception, since we've been working on it, it's only gotten more and more relevant. With the Black Lives Matter movement, especially coming after the release of the Uluru Statement from the Heart. And for me, it's a deeply personal journey as well. Always as an artist, when you start expressing yourself, it's always like, am I doing okay? Is what I'm making even worthwhile? Is anyone out there actually reading or listening to my poetry? And then apparently there are people out there who read my poetry and enjoyed it, and apparently the Oils count themselves amongst those people who have read my poetry, and they liked it enough to bring me on board. So it was a lot of validation that came very quickly. It's sort of, I think it encapsulates a lot about the current climate that we're in, where a lot of people are ready for change, and a lot of us in the community are, becoming able to be there to help facilitate the change in many more ways than the generations above us were able to. I only just started on my language revitalization journey for myself and for my family, and it wasn't long after I started that journey that the Oils reached out to me. And if they had started this project 4 years ago, I wouldn't have, been there as a Gadigal poet to join them on that journey. Yeah. So in my opinion, Gadigal land is a little bit cheeky. Welcoming people to Gadigal country is something I have some experience in. My grandfather, that a lot of people in Sydney affectionately know as Uncle Ray Davison, of course, does a lot of welcome to countries, and under his guidance, I've had the privilege of giving welcome to country as well. My biggest one was at New Year's Eve last year, welcoming in 2019, and it's always a bittersweet thing because of the fact that we're welcoming people onto a country that we have no self-determination within. We're welcoming people onto a country that we have no control over in terms of how our resources are lifted from the country, and how we're poisoning our land, and the absolute destruction of the natural wildlife that was here prior to colonization. Welcoming people onto a country where, by and large, our culture that has existed here for thousands of years isn't really appreciated. So it's really bittersweet, and this song is a really cheeky way of addressing that, I think. It's sort of like, one of my aunties who was a mentor to me, teaching me Darug language, she said it was, if you listen to colonial Australian history, it's like the colonists rocked up and our men stood there on one leg and said, "Hey, welcome! Take my kids, take my wife, take my land. Take it all, open arms." And when I asked my dad how he felt about the song, and how like the history that he thinks I should be expressing, he reminded me that there's a mural not too far from this studio depicting the first arrival, and in the mural it captures a fairly aggressive response of the time that is historically accurate in a lot of reports. So it is a cheeky look at the colonial Australian history and sort of saying, you're saying that we welcomed you in, and that's what we have to say now, because by and large you're already here. Australia isn't just ours to share anymore. But the reality is, at the time, is that when the colonists landed, there was a lot of rage. For my ancestors, when the colonists land, every day after that was a day of rage or misery or suffering. Yes, rock and roll.